Hello everyone, this is our next video of Fortinet NSE 4 series, and the today video we are going to understand the source net on the Fortinet firewall. So let's begin the video. Source net port address translation. So network address translation NAT is the process that enables a single device such as router or firewall act as an agent between the internet and public network. So the netting is the process which is also known as the agent between the firewall and the public network such as the internet. This agent acts a real-time translate the source or destination IP address of the client on server, the network interface. So this is basically the process of translation from one source to the another source. So this can be a both side, the source address translation and destination address translation. So but this video is concentrated on the source network address translation. So in static net, all internal IP addresses are always mapped with the same public IP address. This is the port address translation. So in static net, what will going to happen? Basically, this is known as the PAT on interface. So this process known as the static net or port address translation. Basically, this is the SNAT. We called as a port address translation because we are not changing the IP address. We are changing the just port numbers. We will use the interface public IP with different port numbers, so that we can see on this chart also the internal ranges are 1, 2, 3, and for the external ranges, wait a minute. So on the external range, this will be the source ports and this will be the translated ports. And this is the source port. So basically our internal ranges are translated to the external range. So this is only the one IP address. This is also known as the port address translation in the Cisco terminology. Let me show you the how we can configure it. So basically this video is only concentrated about the theory parts. I will create a separate one where we can quickly demonstrate the labs. So just quickly to show you how we can create this SNAT. This is not a dynamic net. What I did, I have to select the policy that which communication is required for the netting. Basically this is port 3 to port 4, port 2. I'm just opening the policy. So I will cover in this on the lab. This is just a theory overview. So we can see there is the two things. One is the use outgoing interface address, and second is the use dynamic IP pool. So currently we are in the use outgoing interface address. So what is the outgoing interface? This is the port 2. So the FortiGate will take this port 2 assigned IP address as a PAT for the any incoming traffic which is coming from port 3. So if you define the source and destination, that condition will also match. So this is the process to creating a SNAT or PAT using the interface. So let's begin the second thing. So this is the SNAT. And what is the dynamic SNAT? So dynamic SNAT, that private IP addresses to the first available public addresses from a pool of addresses. So in the first method, where we have only option to NAT with the interface assigned IP address, but in the second option we have options to create a pool, and using that pool we can do a translation. So this can be done by using IP pools. IP pools is a mechanism that allows sessions leaving FortiGate firewall to use NAT. An IP pool defines a single IP addresses or range of IP addresses to be used as a source address during the duration of the sessions. So these assigned addresses are used instead of the IP address assigned on the FortiGate interface. So what we understand on the first section, that SNAT, where we have only option to select this interface, use outgoing interface. But in the second section, there is a dynamic IP pool. So we can select the net from the pool. So what is the dynamic SNAT? So dynamic SNAT, where we have options to select any one of the IP address which is available on the pool. So now let's understand the pool. So if I go to quickly, there is the IP pools. If I click new, then we have to define the pools. So IP pool comes under the dynamic SNAT. So let's understand the pool types are available. What are the pool types of available? The first pool type is the overload. This type of IP pool is like a static NAT mode. We need to define an external IP range that contains one or more IP addresses where there is only one IP address. It almost same as a static SNAT. The outgoing interface is used, which when it contains multiple IP address, it is equivalent to extended mode of SNAT. So let's say if we create a pool where we have only one IP address, so that is similar to the SNAT where we are only have option with the interface. But when we define the range like a 2-3 IPs, then that is also known as the extended mode of static net. Basically, they will also do a pet but pool of IP addresses. For instance, if we define an overload type IP pool with two external IP addresses, since there are 60,416 port numbers per IP, this IP pool can handle. So 61416 into 2, that means that two IP address with the allocated blocks internal IP addresses. So this is the original IP address and this is the translated source IP. So they are using, so basically we have two IP address, so they will use two IP address with the random translated source port. So that I can show you on this table. So first we understand that's SNAT, and now we are going to understand the another types. That one is the overload. So in the overload, we just type the name, let's say test, and now here we have to define the external ranges. So let's say if I say 192.168.40.10, 192.168.40.10. So in this case, I have defined only one IP address. So if I have defined only one IP address, this is the similar to this, that is SNAT, where only one IP address is available, just like an interface. Let's say if I define 40, like a 10 to 20 means that we have the 10 IP address. So now take the incoming internal range can pick any one of the IP address, also the available port numbers. So let's say if I click OK, so this is the overload dynamic IP pool. So if I go to the policy, then I need to select this dynamic pool so that it will apply to that particular policy. So earlier what I did, I just select the interface, but in this case what I will do, I will select my test IP pool. Now whenever the traffic will come, they will hit this pool. So this is the overload pool, means that pat. So patting will done the 10 IP address. This is the overload. Now let's move to the another one. So with these things I already explained that this is 2 means the 2 IP address, 10 means the into 10 means that available allocated port numbers. The another type will be the 1-to-1. So this type of pool means that internal IP addresses and external IP addresses match 1-to-1. The port address translation is disabled when using this type of pool. IP defined 1-to-1 IP pool with two external IP addresses. This can handle two internal IP address. So this is basically static NAT. In the Cisco term, let's say if I define 1.1.1.1, if I say this is my internal, so respective, let's say 2.2.2.2. So if I say 1 to 1 means that this internal can only take a translation of 2.2.2. They will not take as a port number for the translation. This is the static NAT in the term of Cisco. And in the term of Fortinet, this type of pools we known as the 1-to-1. So this is the 1-to-1 mapping. So let me quickly show you how we can create this. If I go to the IP pools, so 1-to-1. So here we just define that external IP ranges 192.168.20.1, 20.10, and then 192.168.20.30. So this is the external range we define for the 1-to-1, but this is the static. So if we define 1-to-1 type with 2 external IP address, this pool can only handle 2 internal IP address. So it means that, so if I have defined 10 to 30 means that I have available public IP addresses that 20. So because starting from 10 to ending with 10, 30 means that now I have only 20 public IP address. If I say 1-to-1, so what about that 31 connections, that 31 or 32? So those connections will be blocked, or those connections will be not work, because I have defined this object as a 1-to-1. Now this is completed. So this is basically the static net. This was the PAT with the extended pool. This is the static net in the term of Cisco. Internal number of available public addresses equal to number of available the private IP addresses. Now let's go back to the next one. So this is the another type of that pool. For the overload and 1-to-1 type of pools, we do not need to define the internal ranges. So if I go back to this pool creation, so here we are not defining internal networks, but in post fixed port range, we have to define the internal IP range also. So we can define the internal IP range and the external IP range, since each external IP addresses and number of available ports are specific number. If the number of internal IP addresses is also determined, we can calculate the port range for each addresses translation combination. So we call this fixed port range, this type of IP pool type, as a port address translation. So basically, so what we are doing here, first thing, we can define the internal IP range. So this internal IP range, it is only available to the fixed port range pool. First thing, since each external IP addresses and number of available addresses are a specific number. So the second point is that external number of port is a specific number. So we can calculate it. If number of internal IP addresses is also determined, then we can calculate the port range. So this is the another type where we can define the internal range versus we can calculate the port ranges. So, and the backend, like if I say that concept, this is another way of the PAT. So basically we are doing the translation with the defined internal IP addresses and with the external IP addresses. So this is the another type of PAT where we can define the fixed port ranges. This we can define the fixed port ranges like a ports per user. We can define here. One user can how many, like let's say 1100. So we can define the ports per user, and here we can define the internal ranges 192.168, let's say 30.10 and 192.168 30.20, 30.30. So the first one is the external range, and the below one is the internal range, and here we have located the ports per user. So here we can now assign the name the fixed port range. So here we are defining the internal with ports per user. So this we are defining. So this is not being generally used, but we can use this thing also. But this is not a commonly used. So the another one be this we have done, and let's create another will be the port block allocation. So let's understand the port block allocation. This type of IP pool is also also a type of port pad. This is also a pad. It gives user a more flexible way to control the way external IP and ports are allocated. Users need to define the block size, block per user, external IP range. Block size means that how many ports are each block contains. Block per user means how many blocks each user internal IP. So this is like a blocks per user, block size, external user, block size versus user means. So this is some kind of another way of port address translation where we have options to calculate the things. So external IP range, I just have taken one of the example. This will be the external IP range. Block size means the number of available IP addresses is 8, and this is the per user blocks means that slash blocks per user 8. What will be the result? Total PBA is 60416 divided by 128, and maximum ports can be allocated for internal 1024 128 into 8. And how many internal IP can be handled? So this will be the calculation. So this is like a rarely used kind of IP blocks, uh, IP pools, but we can define this thing where we can define the external IP addresses, we can define the block size and block per user. So this is the external things we can define on the port block allocation. So here we have to define the block size, that number total, what is the total block size of this external ranges. Blocks per user, we can define that. So this is the one of example where I have taken the external IP range, block size, block per user, and this will be the results. So yeah, so these are the objects, these are IP pools available for the source net. So using this IP pools, we can create a policy and take the required source net translation. So it depends if you want that static net with the interface, you can take as a pool of IP addresses, and you can take the one-to-one number of internal IP ranges equal to the external ranges. Fixed port range, we have to define the internal, external versus number of ports it is required for the user. Port block allocation means that external IP addresses needs to provide and the block size and the per user. So this was the video related to the source net on the Fortinet firewall. So in the next video, we will perform a lab to understand the source net in the better way. Thanks for watching Firewall Experts. Please subscribe the Firewall Expert for this kind of videos.